And welcome to Kicking It with Sensei. And today we're joined by Soke Haisan Kaleak. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Soke.
Yeah, Hassan Kaleak, yes, sir.
Hassan Kaleak. And it's a great pleasure to have you on today, Soke.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect. And if you'd like to give the audience just a little bit of background into your martial arts and how you got started.
Yes, sir. My name is Hassan Kaleak. The title is Soke, founder or headmaster. I've been in the martial art for 54 years now. Multiple martial art backgrounds, but mostly Shotokan Karate, Kurokushinkai, and Sunugashu Jiu-Jitsu. I'm also the founder of a style called Shikai Jitsu Karate Do, which is really an eclectic way of putting those things together from the philosophies and the teachings of the teachers that I had that brought me this far.
Excellent. So you trained under the legendary Moses Powell. How was it training under such a renowned martial artist?
Well, you know, it was really a life-changing experience. I'm still evolving from it as we speak right now. You know, Supreme Grandmaster Dr. Moses Powell was one of the first people who brought jiu-jitsu to the area where I'm in. You know, give you a little bit of history on him, and he was one of the first people to perform in front of the United Nations as a martial artist. He also was the first person to perform at the New York World's Fair at the time in 1966, and so many other ways of bringing out martial art and his eclectic way of thinking about self-defense. And he named his style Sunugashu Jiu-Jitsu, which defines itself as the way of survival. And I think that is kind of like the prelude to everything that I've done since that time. You know, we often talk about self-defense, but we really get to the part where it really comes down to survival. And he was the one who put that in me. But I spent some 22 years training up under him. And inside that time, you know, I was able to call him my friend and mentor at the same time. And that's rare sometimes to have that kind of relationship. So the conversations I had with him was just as important as his physical training, you know.
Excellent. And I'd like to thank Sensei Keith, one of your students, for actually introducing us. And he actually sent me a video of yourself explaining you don't believe in self-defense. And would you like to expand a little on that?
Yeah, I get into a lot of controversial conversations with that because me being in the martial art, and I think that martial artists have, as I said one time in an interview, that I think it's a built-in chip that we have that says when someone does something to us, then we're going to do something to them. So in other words, we're defending ourselves. But we also know that in real life, that can often be fatal to us because sometimes we see the intent, we know the intent, we feel the intent, but we do nothing about it because we are now waiting for that person to do something. So that was sort of my interpretation of self-defense, waiting for something to happen. Well, according to Dr. Powell's philosophy, he had a philosophy of get off first. At least that's how he quoted it to us. And that sometimes can get misinterpreted too. It does not mean go at my adversary just because he offended me or whatever. But when we read an intention, it's real important for us to address that right away. And then what I mean by, since we know that martial art is spiritual, mental, and physical, and we are those three beings all of the time. And we spend our whole martial art career trying to perfect those three to come as one. And I think that that's the thing that makes us different from them, which means the adversary sees himself as three separate entities. But the martial artist is always those three. He focuses on that in his training all the time. But sometimes we lack in the ability to really try to personify our mental part of it or our spiritual part of it. We work a lot on our physical. And so an intent is a mental thing, and we sometimes don't address that. And I think that we are sort of defenseless sometimes when it comes to that because we don't attack the intent. We wait for the physical action to happen. So in my explanation of not believing in self-defense was that I think that we should train for survival and that we can always back it up and train in self-defense. But you can always train in self-defense and be ready for that intent. So I always say, you know, you need to murder this person's intent. And then people get a little excited when I say that because, you know, it's like, well, what are you talking about? But there's no crime to you on your behalf to murder someone's intentions. Matter of fact, I think of that as a mercy. I've given you the mercy by taking the intent out. And therefore, you're sort of a toothless tiger now.
Excellent. And you've also created the TNT combat system. Could you explain what that is? It sounds quite interesting.
It's an acronym for TNT is a tactical neutralization training. And again, it speaks to that neutralizing the fight as opposed to trying to go from 0 to 100. You know, and oftentimes what happens, we are always liable for what we do. I know in many states here in the States, if you don't know your penal codes and what the stand your ground rules are, the castle, these are all things that change almost daily, but there's no major announcement as to when and how far you can go to quote unquote defend yourself. But if we focus on neutralizing the attack, then we get a chance to decide what we're going to do from that point. And a lot of times things happen accidentally in defending yourself. And you may have even taken a weapon away from the person and used it on them. Yeah. That's not self-defense. And in a lot of states, it's not. But if you neutralize the attack, then you can decide what you want to do from that point. So TNT is for those people who don't want to put on the martial art uniform. They don't want to go through the requirements of the regimen of timing grade for rank and white belt, yellow belt, so forth. They can come and train with us for with that intent on trying to better themselves and attack your ways of survival or thinking by thinking of it mentally first. So there's a lot of conversation that goes on with that class. And it's a lot of situation defensive. So what happens when you're in a chair? I mean, something as simple as when you walk through a door, which way should you be looking first, over your back or the opposite way? And that sometimes neutralizes the next thing that's going to happen.
Definitely. And something else I wanted to touch on today, and I think you're the first guest I've had on that's actually worked as a bounty hunter. How did you find your way into that line of work? And
what type of work?
Bounty hunting.
Oh yeah, that was
unusual.
Yeah, it kind of was accidental in the sense that here in the States, bail enforcement agents are not given weapons. They're not given guns, tasers, or anything, and they're sent after criminals, you know, to bring them in. You know, it's like a citizen's arrest kind of thing, and you know, they split the bail bond and so forth. It is a way of making some lucrative money, and it is a big chain of them nationwide, because usually when people skip bail, they go to another state. And when they run to my state, I get a phone call saying, hey, this guy may be running there because he has relatives. And so we split the bail bond. But how I got into it was a young man came to me with a bail bondsman. And he went to explain to me that, you know, he likes to work, but he really knows that he don't know enough to be able to apprehend somebody or how to arrest them, so to speak. And so when I was training him, he introduced me to the people who were running that organization. And they looked at my skills and they, you know, allowed me to be able to take that training. And then it really was like that, me helping others that were not as skilled as I am. And I'm not a big guy. These guys were coming to me, they were really brawny, but they didn't know how to really handle themselves. So they were impressed with the fact that I can teach apprehensive techniques to them without, and again, neutralizing, because you can't bring this guy back all banged up, you know?
Definitely. And you've spent more than half a century in the martial arts. What advice would you give someone young starting out on their journey?
Well, you know, it's about evolution. And I think that it's real important for a martial artist to know that he has to evolve. And what I mean by that is that I now consider myself as a martial scientist. I study the human anatomy. I have all types of things that I bring to class, teaching about the spine, and how many sections there are to spine, and how the spine really connected to the whole skeleton of the body here.
Yeah.
And I have these things in my class all the time. You know, I have to make sure that my students know there's 206 bones in the human body and so forth. This kind of science is real important for you to understand, because as a martial artist, you have to understand it. You have to know your enemy, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the important part is the enemy is really you. If you have 206 bones, he has 206 bones. If your bones break at the elbow, then his break at the elbow. So we have classes that we call limb destruction. So limb destruction is the limbs of the body. We focus a lot on that. Again, this is not going to kill anybody, but it will neutralize. And so it's real important to understand you don't have to go at the whole body, or what your adversary is always trying to punch you in the head or the eyes or whatever. I don't know nobody that ever died from a black eye, you know, but, you know, nevertheless, that's where all the attacks want to be. But again, my advice to a young person going to the arts is it's okay to be a martial artist, but at some point you want to become a martial scientist and be proud of that as well. You know, one of the things that I advocate to the students all the time is that I tell them they must be seekers. They must be able to go out and look for this stuff. You know, there was a time when masters of old would be in a certain region of the world, and you would take a pilgrimage to them to ask the master humbly, could you teach me? Nowadays, you know, we have the internet, we have all kinds of things like that. You can seek out these masters no matter what country they are and get some knowledge from them. And much like you and I, just have a conversation with them and maybe be more enlightened as to, you know what, that makes sense. You know, because my teacher, Supreme Grand Master Dr. Moses Powell, had a philosophy. He used to say, take this and put it what you already have to make it better. So now you have a style of martial art that's eclectic to everything that you're putting together. And then not so much to call it your own, but everybody is uniquely fit for doing certain things. And their mindset, remember, as a martial artist, you're always mind, body, and spirit. So you want to be able to put those things together. So my advice would be to be a seeker. You know, I tell my students all the time that I'm only the needle on the compass. I point you towards the knowledge. I'm not here to really teach you per se. It's for you to take the knowledge I have and make sense of it in your world to make a better world for you so that you can survive, for you and your family. So seeking is the principle that I believe in. This look, there's so many things that are here now that weren't here when I was coming up. There was no internet when I was coming up. I couldn't come train with you if you invited me, and a lot of times that was blasphemous for me to go outside of my style and train with someone else. It's not now. You can actually be eclectic and learn more and benefit yourself that way.
And it hasn't changed a very long time either. Now I remember when I started, 28 years ago, you didn't go outside your own style. It was frowned upon. So it's great to see that evolving within the community as well. And you've spent, as I said, you've spent a long time in martial arts, and I'm sure you've given out a lot of showdowns over the years. But what would you look for in a student when you're awarding them a showdown?
You know, that's a real, I think, personal question when you ask every black belt that's been around that has, you know, and for me to actually give an answer for people to go, wow, well, that must be maybe the way, there's something to look for. But it really is different for every black belt. It really is. I know some of my friends, they're very, very big on loyalty. You know, the code, so to speak, either the code of Bushido or the code of family or whatever. And there is a lifetime loyalty that's supposed to be committed to either the master, the school, the style, or whatever. And this, by far, has great reasoning behind it in order to keep the style going and to be able to keep those lessons going. And then there's some instructors that, hey, you know, I'm like Yale or Princeton. I'm just a professor in here teaching, and the students that come through me, it's just part of my job. You know, I'm not trying to say, well, you know, I want them all to remember me or things of that nature. You know, and in a large sense today, you will see this scenario being played out where, if you think about boot camp in the military, that drill sergeant is designed to make a commissioned officer when he graduates, who outranks him. So at the end of graduation, that drill sergeant now has to salute that lieutenant. But while he's in boot camp, he has to submit to what the drill sergeant says. So again, as an instructor, what are we looking for? I mean, that drill sergeant really has saved someone's life. Many lieutenants go on to be, captains and commanders, but the drill sergeant is still there doing that which makes warriors. So again, for me, it has changed over the years. I have not personally had a lot of black belts, that I have made black belts that have been loyal to me and my teacher. They have not been those kind of people who are like myself, who always advocate. I always advocate my teacher's name and legacy, no matter where I go. They have not done the same for me. But again, maybe that has been a lesson to me, to really show me that it is you to be a continuing source of evolution, you yourself, not necessarily rely on someone else to do it. So there was a lesson in that for me as well. But personally, I have a lot of black belts that I have brought to fruition, but I don't really think of a lot of them as claiming me as a person that has done that good deed.
Yeah. Excellent. And finally, throughout martial arts, your journey changes from different aspects, and different things appeal to you at different stages. What appeals to you now, and what's your goals for the next while through training martial arts?
Yes, sir. It's sort of a short circle when you think about decades. Myself right now, this interview we're having now, I'm 68 years old. So you don't have a lot of cycles to look forward to based on the number 100, right?
Yeah.
So my teacher made his transition in his 60s. Many of his cohorts and brethren didn't make it past that part. Just looking at a picture early this morning with him and so many other masters that I trained under, who he called brother, and all of them are not here. Yeah. He was unique in the sense that my teacher, Supreme Grand Master Dr. Moses Powell, because his teacher, Professor Visitation, of Forensic Visitation, lived long enough to see him come to fruition and actually create Sanuka-Shuri Jiu-Jitsu and say that it was a good thing. Now, a lot of times that doesn't happen in martial art. You know that personally. Yeah. It's not a good idea to think that you can go do your own thing. But that was, I guess, and he said it, one of the most highest compliments of his life, to have his teacher bless his method of training. So I think that would be a good thing for me, to be able to see a whole nother generation come from this. I'm also the president of an organization I call the Kadoshi Kickin. And the Kickin is a house of individual warriors that have come together on one purpose. And this is not a new concept, because in Bushido, it's just part of the code. But a lot of times, we are all so eclectic nowadays, and so many people are thinking this is my thing. And the expression, there's nothing new under the sun. Yeah. So a lot of times we have to kind of understand, you can call it by different names, and different cultures can pick up the art, but a kick is a kick, a punch is a punch, and a throw is a throw. But a lot of times, because a certain ethnic group will do it, it becomes, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Israeli Jiu-Jitsu, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It gets to have this name, but if everyone just understood that maybe that's the person that presented to you, because the one thing that I can give credit for the Gracies and what they do, even though they're Brazilian, they never ever shunned away from the fact that it was the Japanese that taught that taught their father. And so they're just saying, hey, we just doing the gi because we're Brazilian and we're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They never tried to make it look like they invented it. And I think that was, I want to call it the saving grace, as being the thing that why most martial artists respect them for what they do, because they are really just running the John Doe thing. I just happen to have the mic now, so you hear me, but I'm not really doing nothing different. And I think that when more martial artists start to understand that, give credence from where it came from, and I'm just a continuance of that, then I think that the whole martial art world will be better, because it will cause people to seek the root of what comes from there. And I say that because that's what happened when I seen the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is how come I know of Grandmaster Helio's teaching. I could see where that came from. And to give credit for where these people have evolved from will make us all see we all have one common denominator. And I think that that's important. When a martial artist student is really trying to enhance himself in the art, you know where it all came.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a great pleasure speaking with you today, Soke. And
Thank you.
it's
Thank
an
you.
honor. And thank you very much for coming on.
I thank you so much. You know, you're doing some great work out here, and I appreciate you taking the time to invite me to your audience.
Thank you.